fears because they're actually excuses. And when I hear these fears talked about, it's either one of two things: somebody afraid of taking action, or somebody afraid you're going to take action. Welcome to my Tuesday live stream. I do these every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and the goal of this content is to answer your questions. The intro, the first 10 to 15 minutes, is going to be me covering this topic, giving you a chance to get your questions into the chat on things like financial freedom, making work optional. Is it possible to do this if you're super lazy like I am? Those kind of questions. But I'm in a lot of chat groups, BiggerPockets forums, Choose FI forums, one rental at a time. And I see people with concerns as to why they don't want to be a landlord. And basically, it's based in fear. But these fears aren't based in reality, making them excuses, or what I'm calling fake fears. One of the first ones is it's really hard to remember what it's like to not know something. So once you know something, most of us subconsciously assume everybody knows that. And here's a couple of examples of that. The first is, if you listen to Dave Ramsey will say things like, what if the bank calls the note? And he cites his own examples. He had to file bankruptcy because the banks wouldn't refinance. They called the notes. And so he's built a platform that's helped millions of people and done a lot of good. If people are really bad with money and don't understand debt, and you can use his baby steps to get out of bad debt, that's helping you. But when he says, or people say something like, what if the bank calls the note? Your grandparents might say things like, what if the bank calls the notes? Because most people don't realize that 30-year mortgages didn't really start being kind of mainstream until the middle of the 70s. So when were your grandparents thinking of buying a house? What did mortgages look like then? If you acquire a mortgage at 30-year fixed rate debt, you do not have a loan reevaluation period. You don't have a rate that can adjust. You don't have a bank that can call the note no matter what happens. Even if the bank fails and closes down, your note is a financial instrument that is just then purchased by somebody else in that bankruptcy process for the bank, which is their problem, not yours. As long as you're making the payments, they can't call the note. Now, a foreclosure can happen if you stop making the payments, but they don't just call the note. No matter what happens, you have a contract that calls for a 30-year mortgage. So let's take it to the next step. You have people that say, well, I really wouldn't want to own rentals. I've actually had people say this to me. They say, oh, I don't want to be in your position. It scares me so much. Look what's happened to interest rates in the last 3 years, right? You know, if you purchased a property or you refinanced a property in 2020 or 2021 and you've got like a 3% interest rate, and you look like a baller and you're making tons of money, but now look at interest rates, they're like 7 or 8%. You're screwed. What do you do now? This is a fake fear. Is it harder? Almost always harder to buy real estate than it's ever been in the past. And in 3 years, this will be the time when we'll say it's easier to buy. And I have a couple of examples as to why right now it's easier to buy than it will be in 3 years. But is it harder to buy when interest rates are 6 or 7%? Yes. But let's see rule number one. The first thing there of what if the bank calls the loan? You're purchasing properties with 30-year fixed rate debt. That means that when you purchased in 2020 or refinanced in 2020 and you have a rental at 2 or 3% interest and the rates go up, you are not impacted. What actually happens is it becomes harder to buy a house, forcing more people to become tenants, increasing demand on a limited supply of rentals. And so you, the landlord that has real estate with that 30-year fixed rate debt, benefits from interest rates going up. Fake fear. Then we'll do some tangibles, right? Those are theoreticals. What if the bank calls a note? Doesn't happen on fixed rate mortgages. What if interest rates go up? Doesn't impact you negatively, impacts you positively. So then people say, well, what if I buy a rental and I can't find a tenant? How many months can I afford to pay the mortgage before I run into problems? And this isn't the actual fear that we're going to have. making sure that the super chats coming in aren't somebody saying, you have no sound, because I've done that before. 10 minutes in, finally look at the chat and go, oh, nobody heard a word of what I said. It's awesome. If you buy a rental, the fear, which there are real fears, let's shift the fear from a fake fear to a real fear. The fake fear in this case is, how many months will I be vacant that I just can't find a tenant and I have to cover the mortgage? The real fear is, if I can't find a tenant at the rent that I want, how much might I have to lower the rent to attract a tenant? Right? If you're in an area where area average rents are a certain amount and you're trying to charge that or more, the good tenants that do their research, that end up being people who handle their finances well, aren't going to rent your place at area average or above. You'll get more qualified applicants if you are just below the area average rent than if you are at or above area average, unless you have something like a pool or a 60-foot shop or something that stands out uniquely as a rental. But most tenants they'll never look at square footage and they'll never look at when the building was built. They're going to look at how many bedrooms it has. Section 8 runs it that way. Most families looking for a place that's based on bedroom count. So the area average rent is what sets rents. And the fear isn't how many months of vacancy, it's how much might I have to go below that. So you need to do the research on knowing what area average rents is to have the right fear of, is this a good deal if I had to lower the rents? That could be a real fear. Then we have my favorite, the thing that stops so many people from getting into real estate. And this is a complaint that I get often. People say, you're not retired, you have rentals. Somebody said it the other day, you're basically like a handyman and a property manager, and those are jobs. And I'm like, okay, sure. But a property manager that's managing 160 unit portfolio of, a bunch of other people's properties, or a handyman that is working 50 to 60 hours a week to make enough money to run his business, those are jobs. But if you self-manage a rental portfolio like mine, now my goal is not to have a big one. Lumberjack Landlord has over 100 units, and he self-manages the rehabs, the flips, the 1031s, all of that. To acquire it was a job. As he stabilizes it, it'll become more passive in the future. But my goal was never the big portfolio. My goal was the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. So when I retired in 2022, I had 16 rental units, and on average, it took me about 2 hours to manage those. Since then, I've added a duplex. And if you take out the BRRRR, because remember, acquiring real estate is not passive, owning real estate is, it's about 2 hours a month to manage. Most of my time managing my rentals in any given month, if I have a tenant turnover, yeah, it's going to be 3 or 4 hours that month to do it. But then most of the other months, it's 30 minutes to an hour just to verify that rents were paid, just to check that I don't have a text that there's an issue. Because the biggest complaint most people get is tenants, toilets, and termites. I don't want to be a landlord because you can get a call at 10 o'clock at night and you have to deal with it. In a decade of owning real estate, I have had one phone call after 8 p.m. because what I've done is educate my tenants on the 3 words that give them the permission to call me, right? Almost everything can be handled through text or email. Know your local laws. Sometimes texts aren't admissible in court, but emails are. If the conversation is going to include fire, flood, or blood, it's okay to call me, and I should probably be the second call, right? And so I educate my tenants on that when I'm doing the lease signing or when I've acquired a property and I'm doing a landlord introduction letter. I say, this is when it's okay this is how I like to be communicated with. One time in a decade being called after 8 o'clock, and it was for a plumbing issue that took 2 or 3 texts and 1 email to resolve in a decade. Let's compare one phone call after 8 o'clock at night to working 50 or 60 hours a week, to having a boss. And if you have any kind of drive or ambition, you're not one of those, I basically just block the channels when I see them, those people that say, well, my boss better never call or text me after 5 p.m. because that's when I stop getting paid. Well, then you're not going to get the promotion. You're not going to be in a leadership role. You're not going to get considered for new, what are they called? I love it when my brain shuts off. New projects that come up, you won't even be considered if you're not the person who won't answer the phone on the weekend, on vacation. I know, I've been the manager that basically let people sit in their own position and never get promoted because they wouldn't answer that call. And so people do that and work decades longer than they need to because they're afraid of having to answer a phone or a text at night. Now, when you're working 50 to 60 hours a week and you're acquiring your assets, your rentals, and you're stabilizing them and you're learning the processes, yeah, it's kind of overwhelming to get that call. But when you do retire early, when you take the decade that it takes to make work optional and now you don't work, and that 10 o'clock call happens in the middle of your World of Warcraft raid, it can be frustrating. But I would never trade the possible 10 o'clock at night call that has happened once in a decade for 50 to 60 hours a week of selling your life 1 hour at a time to have that job that just over broke. These are some of the fears that I see pop up when people talk about, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. These are fake fears. These are excuses that you are going to use to stay trapped in a job for most of your life. Real estate is never going to be easy, but there are a lot of things we can do to make it easier. One of the things that I recommend doing is educating yourself, finding those people that have done what you're trying to do. If you want to have a small portfolio with a right amount of cash flow and you want to invest the lazy way, watch my content. If you want to invest out of state because you live in a high cost of living area, watch Millennial Mike's content. He house hacks in that high cost of living area. So I still think that's important. Even the more expensive the area you live in, the more important house hacking is. And then he invests at a distance. If you do have that drive and ambition to have a unit count and make tens of millions of dollars in generational wealth, if you care about your kids more than I do, then you watch Lumberjack Landlord, Matt, watch his content. Even if you do what I'm doing, you watch Matt's content because he has ways of saving money on small things to do to get better rents to make your places look nicer that I'm actually using in my small portfolio. So I'm not saying that you have to want a huge portfolio to watch Matt or to watch Zuber from one rental at a time or any of the people that we interact with. Find the people doing the strategy that works for you and then watch what they're doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's kind of my fear with real estate is I don't want to do something that no one else has ever done. Yeah, I come at it from a different angle. I like to have, my own perspective on it. But we have what is called a tax incentive program. The government rewards you for doing what they want you to and punishes you for doing what they don't want you to. Let's look at this. This will be the last thing I wrap up this intro to this video with before I jump into the questions. And if you're watching this in Futureland, because I chopped this part of the video out to make a separate video, and you want your questions answered live, the reason this is important to me is because anyone can research the topic for a video. I've got a video coming out later this week on how insurance companies and landlords are very similar. And I'm doing some research for it. So that's not really going to help me make a decision when I'm looking at a rental on whether I pursue it. What should I make the offer on? What helps me make that quick decision is watching other content creators, other investors in the market, or sending a text randomly to old guy REI Frank and saying, hey, what would you do in this case? Because I know I'm getting the answer of what he keeps in his mind. During these live sessions, when you ask a question, you get what an investor who reached financial freedom, made work completely optional, and never has to work again, keeps at the top of mind awareness. So I can make those quick decisions when I'm looking at properties, which is what I'm going to be doing tonight at 6 o'clock during our members only video, which that you guys, if you're members, you should have got a notification if your notification bell is turned on, that is happening tonight at 6, where we are going to look at deals. Here's how I know that we have a tax incentive program and a tax punishment program all combined into one. The government wants people to do certain things. It rewards you. Government doesn't want you to do certain things. It punishes you. Let's look at the tax on cigarettes and alcohol. Enough studies done that these generally aren't good for you. So what do? 57% alcohol tax. Massive tax on things they don't want you to do. Listen very carefully. The government does not want you to work a W-2 job. You will hear the media, who is owned by the people who own the companies, because they need the employees, say, the working person is the backbone of America, and we need people to love their jobs. No. Government punishes you for having a job. What the government needs is innovation, housing, technical advancements, It doesn't need W-2 employees. That's why an employee basically pays around 40% tax. That's an average because if you're in California, it can be over 50%. And in some states, it can be less. Like Washington, we don't have an income tax, but we do have a sales tax. So you're taxed at some point. If you're an entrepreneur, self-employed person, they don't even like you more. They punish you more. You pay the employer and employee side of the taxes. You pay about 60% in taxes. Now, our tax incentive program that punishes you for smoking, punishes you for drinking, should punish you for having androids, but they punish you for having a job. They reward you for running a company. The company that has the employees, that has an R&D department, that spends money to grow their company, pays around 20% in taxes. And then that investor that just takes money and puts it to work because that takes money out of the system, which keeps the money having value, can pay zero in taxes. I made a little over $230,000 last year, and I'm carrying forward a loss in my taxes because of depreciation and write-offs, because the government loves people who provide housing. And yes, you can hate landlords. You can say they don't provide housing. But I have 18 rental units, and out of that, I have one single family house. The rest are all small multifamily and duplexes. And if somebody like me didn't buy them and fix them up, maintain them, have insurance on them, they wouldn't have tenants in them. So there are people providing housing. And to do that, the government says, thank you, don't pay any taxes. Matter of fact, if you make too much money next year, you can take that paper loss from this year and use it against that. Be really careful with what you're choosing to do. We all need to work a W-2. No, that's not true. The less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt he is to look foolish in retrospect. Tarantino quote. Most people need a W-2. There are entrepreneurs who try a job for a couple of weeks, like Graham Stephan or Cody Davis, and they just work a little bit and they're like, nope, that's not for me. And they go and buy real estate. Most of us have to work a W-2. I'm a good employee. I'm not an entrepreneur. I tried a couple of times and it didn't work out. I am an investor. I worked my job, punished by the government, paid my taxes, spent less than what I made after taxes, and saved and invested the difference to put my money to work to where I never have to work again, because I understand the government doesn't want W-2 employees. I am now not a W-2 employee. You understand why Social Security exists, right? It doesn't exist to help older people. It's an incentive program to get older people out of the workplace to make room for younger people. Actually, it started in the 18th century in Germany. Howdy, everybody. Good to see you all here. I saw that there were some super chats. Let me get to those first. Dividend Dave, insert dad joke here. I will do that. I tell dad jokes all the time, but he never laughs. The Wealth Building Journey. Thank you for the super chat. And Dave, it's good to see you. Hear from you. There you go. Wealth Building Journey. Ironic, the title of the show. I went to Detroit this weekend to look at turnkey properties, and now the drums, I'm under contract. It's not a home run, but I'm on the property ladder, and rent meets the 1% rule. That is awesome. And you know what's funny, Chester? Not one of my deals has ever hit the 1% rule. So I wouldn't have minded if they did. They just never have. So we will have to get together. Hopefully you'll be in the members tonight, and we will go over what your deal is all about. And we have Mr. Newton, the millennial Mike here. Howdy.
Yeah, I heard you say something about having a W-2 job and most people needing a W-2 job before you corrected yourself. And I just felt myself summoned to the live stream as your only working friend.
It was very fun at the Sacramento One Rental at a Time event. We go to dinner. We've got Beth and Cody and Christian and all of us at the table. And it dawned on everybody there that you were the only person with a job.
Still am, unfortunately, and it's been 2 years almost.
For now. Like we need that job for a period of time. I think you're on an accelerated path than what I was on. Which is not a bad thing. And it doesn't hurt that you started a decade sooner than I did as far as age goes, too. That
doing what I can, trying to make it to that early retirement, trying not to make all of the excuses that you were talking about earlier that would keep people from not only getting into real estate, but also maybe keep them from getting out of their W-2.
Do you have a favorite excuse that you've heard of why people can't invest in real estate?
Yeah, I mean, they change with the times. For most people, I think that the initial response when they haven't heard, when they don't know anything about real estate whatsoever, like somebody who's brand new, they just think to themselves, it's too expensive, you can't afford anything. That one's usually easily overcome very quickly. And then if you get into the people who are actually actively researching how to get started in real estate and what their biggest concern is, typically I think that a lot of the times it's either analysis paralysis. Oh, I can't find the right deal, the rent. There's something that's wrong with every single property. Or from there, they're I think really just most people are afraid to pull the trigger. And my guess would be it's because it's just something new and untested and untried in their mind. And literally, if they just buy the first one, it'll open the floodgates. I think of Senya, who was married, and her husband had, like, her original husband or her ex-husband had like real estate back in 2006. They went through the recession, and then for like the next 15 years, she kind of casually would look at real estate. She messaged me for 2 years. She couldn't bring herself to do it. She was afraid of all the problems that might happen. And then this year in January, she buys her first one. And within 3 months, she's got seven single family houses because she got herself over the hump. She had all the money sitting there. And then she just went in full force. So, and of course, she's had all the growing pains that come with that, and things. But not yet have I heard her say, "I wish I had not have done this," or "I regret this decision," or "What did you convince me to do, Mike?" So, that's just, you get in and you start taking the fights one at a time.
Yeah, I don't think I've had that either. I don't think I've had anybody reach out and say, I can't believe you talked me into this. I've had a lot of people go, I wish I'd started sooner. I have a lot of people that I'm going to put a couple of people on the spot, but Josh and Mary, they were REI Stoners, now they're Martin Properties. I've had a couple of interactions with him in the last couple of months. What has happened to rents in his area? Right. And he's looking at maybe their second house, what's actually going to happen. And his return, he was expecting, 10 to 15%. It's going to be quite a bit better than that. And you could just see it on his face when he's saying, man, this real estate thing's a lot better than people keep saying.
It works.
And with your analysis paralysis or people getting stopped, I think that there's a certain group of people, the largest group, that use that as the excuse to never do anything. And then this is the second person I'm going to put on the spot. There's a small group of people who get stuck in analysis paralysis but have good intentions, right? Zuber spent the first year in his spreadsheet until Olivia said, we're not doing this again. You pick a market, pick a thing, do it or not. So Chester, and I'll only pick on him because I know he's got a great sense of humor, but he has spent a significant amount of time in his spreadsheet stuck on one concept. I want to buy a house with a lot of bedrooms and a lot of bathrooms, and I want to rent by the room. That's probably the most logical way for me to go. Stuck on it for a long time. Now, Zuber spent 6 months to a year in his market before he moved out to Fresno. I luckily was saving and getting my rental income on my tax returns, but I spent about a year and a half hunting for a single family house that would make sense. And then luckily, about the time it was time for me to buy, I realized, no, small multifamily is the only one that makes sense in my area. And did the house hack. Chester, now going, okay, I've done the research, I've done this, but that strategy, I'm not finding the deals. Found some that were pretty close, needed too much work, or didn't have parking, so it wouldn't work by rent by the room, right? But after enough time, finally, under contract, out of market, investing at a distance, find a strategy that works. So if you're dead set on this is what I want to invest in and this is the market, you have to use that law enforcement idea of, a cop can't show up on scene and go, I think this happened. Let me find the evidence to back up my theory, right? You have to show up open-minded and go, okay, based on the evidence, I think this happened, and my mind is open to when I find new evidence, change my opinion. Now, if we could just get some prosecuting attorneys to play along and do the same thing, that'd be great. But Chester, you found the different market, a different asset class. You have the knowledge base. You've learned the skill of looking at deals. You've been in every members only group meeting, looking at the deals with us every time to go that market. And it probably felt kindergarten to analyze the deal that you were looking at. Like that skill was, and that's what Zuber says a lot. You learn the skill in your backyard, then take it wherever you're going to invest. For some of us, it's your backyard. Calling me during a live stream. Love that.
But was it
It's
Zuber or
usually,
Matt?
it's probably one of you guys usually go, hey, your sound's not working. That's my favorite thing. which I appreciate that. Do that in the very time it's not working. Um,
I think people need to recognize that, human nature inside of all of us is going to tend to push us towards doing what's easy. There's a lot of people who won't go to the gym, they won't work out, and they'll have the dumbest excuses for it. You've ever talked to somebody who's like, "Hey man, you need to stop smoking, quit smoking. It's bad for your health." "Oh yeah, I know. Well, I'm not addicted. I can quit whenever I want." "Okay, well, quit right now." "Well, I don't want to quit right now." "Well, why would you not want to quit right now? You know it's bad for you." I mean, there's always going to be excuses. We take the easy way out. I pulled somebody over this morning. He's flying down the road. And, I followed him for probably 3/4 of a mile while he's just doing 25 plus. It's pouring rain, standing water everywhere. He's weaving through traffic. I pull him over. He has no idea how long I've been following him. So, in his mind, I think he thought I just saw him for a second. So I pull him over. And I get up to the car and I'm like, "Hey man, dude, what's going on? Why are you driving so fast? You doing 25 over, flipping through lanes, no signal. This is aggressive driving." He's like, "Well, somebody else, they came up on me. They were riding my tail." And I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, how come you didn't just slow down and pull over to the right? Why did you think the correct response was to do 25 miles an hour over and create this dangerous situation? And the reality is people will just come up with whatever excuse sounds good to them at the time. Typically, it's not backed with a bunch of logic. If you give them the opportunity to at least rationalize their excuse some more, they will. But again, we have to recognize that most of the reasons why we don't take the action we wish we would, it is self-limiting beliefs. It's limiters that we put on ourselves. It's excuses that we make to ourselves. It's rationalizations that, well, I need my free time. I need my free time for my mental health. I need my me time, my relaxation time. I worked hard all week. I earned this. I was at the gym all week. I earned this cheat day. I was loyal to my girlfriend 5 days of the week. I earned this cheat weekend. Just kidding. But you don't want to rationalize the stupid things that'll get you into trouble. Instead, do the hard thing. Fight the lazy. I know that's a little contrary to your channel, but I would say you need to fight the lazy initially so you can earn the lazy long term.
Yeah, I've made a few videos on be the right kind of lazy and use lazy as your motivating factor. Like the idea to be lazy forever, if you're not lazy for a decade, was a strong motivation. And then you want to be the right kind of lazy, right? And it's a quote I get from my dad, right? And and I'm sure he heard it from a billion other places too. But it's if you want to find the easiest way to do something, ask a lazy person. Looking for more questions here. I see all-nighters heading to Alaska, going to miss a couple of months up there. I want to find out what this is about with the tattoos. I was thinking about Mike all conference because he compliments me on my networking. I was turbo networking this last weekend. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Then he says, some people get one tattoo and then get covered. Some people buy one house and then buy a whole portfolio. Yeah. I'm the one tattoo guy. It's weird.
Wait, you really just have that one?
Just have the one. Yeah.
That little butterfly on your lower back?
Yeah. The one that says Mike.
That's my favorite one. Yeah. I appreciate that you put it upside down for me. Okay, we're done.
I got the Mark of Cain tattoo from Supernatural on my arm because Cain killed Abel, and I can completely identify with wanting to kill your brother sometimes. So that's what my tattoo is for. I want to get the next one. I just can't decide. So mostly because I'm commitment phobic, but I see that Kris joined the members. Welcome to Someday. Hopefully we'll see you in the members group tonight at 6. So what will happen is the members only video is here on YouTube. So members can watch the video, but in one of the first comments I will put as soon as the video starts is the link to the Zoom. So everybody who's a member jumps into Zoom together and we look at deals. It can be one of mine, one of yours. I prefer it's one that somebody brings for us to look at because I don't want to look at deals. I don't want to buy until maybe next year. So this year I don't want to look because I know what will happen. I'll look and I'll be, yep, that's a great deal. I better pursue it. And I'm trying to be the right kind of lazy. Elizabeth R. Howdy. Mike needs to come out with a course. Speaking of being lazy.
Wait, was that actually a comment?
That is a comment. Yes, Mike. From Elizabeth R.
Elizabeth? I don't know if I've ever chatted with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, have you messaged me on Instagram? You know what? And here's a great example of someone rationalizing with stupid excuses as to why they haven't done something. Would be me when it comes to the course. I know I need to do a course. Not only have I been asked by probably quite literally at least a couple hundred people, not only have I been encouraged to do so by all of my mentors, Dion, the lumberjack, and Michael Zuber. Not only did I actually sit down and storyboard the course and do probably about 75% of the videos, and they're uploaded on a third-party website, and I'm close to being able to launch it. Why haven't I done it? Truthfully, it's just for whatever reason, there's just some sort of hurdle in my mind. The one thing that I like to hold on to when I get into these debates with people who hate landlords or people that trash talk my YouTube channel, I like being able to say, well, I don't have anything for sale. All the information that I give for free is free. I mean, you can't say that I'm biased and I'm some scam artist selling a course, which if you watch my shorts, those, sometimes they'll get 10, 20,000 views, and there'll be people, mostly the ones that do well, get hated on by anti-capitalist, anti-property ownership losers. And I enjoy saying, no, man, I'm not scamming you with some course. Find something that I sell online. There's nothing. But it would represent a substantial paycheck, even. I mean, there's so many people want to buy a course, and $500 ticket price. Yeah, there's really no good reason not to do it. Yet I'm sitting here not having finished it. So we're all capable of falling to the lazy.
Let me take a shot here and explain how selfish you're being.
I am.
In the friendly way where I'm actually trying to help you. Let's say hypothetically I have a friend or a son who says, maybe this investing out of state would be great. I have the ability to say in my network, I have a friend, Mike, he's got a YouTube channel, Millennial Mike, and he has content on investing out of state. Where do they start? Do they just go to the back end of your channel and watch 5 years of, okay, so he did a bunch of videos on hating on gurus out there. That's great, but how does that help me invest out of state? And then maybe like even searching Millennial Mike investing out of state, does your video on this is how I invested out of state pop up in the first 10? Versus if somebody says, I want to invest in rentals, I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure what path is best. I can go, if you can watch Michael Zuber just for a couple of weeks, go and you'll see his millionaires that come on and talk, and you'll see one of them will resonate with you. Then you go to that person, you watch their content, and yeah, they've probably got a couple of years of content, but Matt's got a course. I came up with the lazy course, right? And I've got the free binder course. So if you want your tenants to ask you to raise the rent, I do that one for free. But if somebody says, man, I really just want to do what Matt did, and you go, kid, here's the course. You can watch 2,000 hours of YouTube, or spend some money, get the course. I would like to be able to go, I don't invest out of state. I think it's totally a viable option. And here's where I would like to send you. And I don't have that right now because I've actually sent a few people who reach out to you on Instagram, but you're really busy, right? You might on a certain day or whatever, you might respond and have a 2-hour conversation with somebody and solve a ton of problems. But sometimes you might be like, I'm at SWAT training. It's really nice to meet you, but I can't talk right now. And then that person's like, oh, I better not reach out a second time because that's rude, right? Versus I could go, here's a course. You have it chronologically in the order that made sense to you for somebody to go, okay, I have this specific problem. I can log in and go and check it out. So hopefully that didn't seem mean.
No,
it's just, I think you're hurting people and being selfish because you want to be able to go, I can argue with you because I'm not selling anything. So you get that. That's the for you thing. Because no one else cares about that.
I know.
The person you're arguing with doesn't care. They say the same thing I do. So they're the gurus saying, the world's going to end and it's going to crash, and they're arguing, or they hate landlords, they hate capitalism, whatever. If somebody tells me something mean, I just go, yeah, your hateful comment is going to make me cry myself to sleep tonight on my lumpy mattress full of cash. So you need to help more people get that lumpy mattress.
Yeah. Well, I need to finish it up. It's close to being done. It's been sitting in the same state for a while now. I just need to finish it up and then launch the darn thing. So, and to a certain degree, I did get a promotion. I promoted to a new position, and that new position put me working from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. It's ruined my sleep schedule, ruined my personal life schedule, my ability to respond to stuff. It's been I love the job. People will message me like, dude, I haven't heard from you in a while. Are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I know it seems like I hate my life right now. I actually don't hate my life. I really genuinely love the opportunity to mentor new people. I get 10 officers that all have less than 4 years on. Some of them have only a couple weeks on. And last night, we had a vehicle that was involved in a pursuit, and no, excuse me, this one wasn't a pursuit. Some dude was overdosing on the fent, and we found him in his car blocking the freeway. They bring him back to life by giving him Narcan, and then of course, while they're in the car saving the dude's life, they see illicit substances everywhere. And so, okay, boom, seal. So he gets arrested after we save his life. Uh, Interesting. And then we seal the car up. We take it, we put it in evidence, and then we got to write. So I got to teach him how to seal the car up because the chain of custody on evidence is very important. And I got to teach him how to do a search warrant for the vehicle. How do you develop probable cause, or how do you explain the probable cause to a judge so that a judge will allow you to go search his vehicle? And then how do you freaking search the vehicle? Okay, here's how you categorize the evidence. Here's how you systemize it. Here's how you keep track of everything. You weigh it, you pack it. Like, I actually enjoy getting to sit there and, just like I teach people about real estate, sit there and mentor all these new people who are excited to come to work, who aren't bitter and upset, who haven't been on long enough to transition to day shift so they can get away from doing real work. That all the night shift goon squad plus me is out here having a good time. So I've genuinely enjoyed it. I hate the freaking work schedule. It's awful.
This is a great question here from Bruno. Remind me, Mike, sometime when we're in person to tell you the story of the trooper that brought the truck to our department for our impound yard and didn't look.
Oh no, no, I want to hear that.
Oh yeah. Ended up being a 3-state, 3-year case.
I actually think I've heard of this from my agency.
Oh, nice.
Because I feel like I've heard a story about someone making this mistake, and this is why we always check.
Always check. Yep. Especially if it's got a canopy on the back and you can literally see inside.
Oh no. Maybe he was short.
Just question yourself and go, is that a people? Bruno says, stay on task here, sorry. When you have acquired your first rental, what is a good base team to have? It's a great question. And there are some people that, to me, that matter more than anything else on the planet as far as your team goes. And your investing strategy is going to shift who this is. For me, investing locally, I say this often, I don't want a team. I want my agents and my lenders to kind of not like me because they know I'm going to shop rates and compete them against each other. I want my contractors to know I'm going to compare quotes. I'm going to show them each the quote. I'm going to go for the best deal. I'm not looking to build relationships because I want 10 or less mortgages in my name. So I don't need to build a relationship like Matt does. But when it comes to handymen, plumbers, and electricians, that is the group of people, men and women, who let me sleep like a baby. That's my team investing locally. I can be in another country. I can have a text or an email. I know they're going to handle whatever issue, leak, no power, whatever it is. A tree falling down, doesn't matter. I've got the Thumbtack app. So I hire people off Thumbtack to do a couple of jobs, see how they interact with me, how their communication style is, how their prices relate, and how their interaction with the tenant goes. And I've developed that relationship. So I don't have anyone else on my team other than the handyman. And some of them are plumbers, electricians, and contractors that do handyman work. At a distance, this is a very different story. Your team, Mike, the ones that matter.
And this is a huge section inside of my course that I've actually already filmed already. And it talks about the most important people on your team and it ranks them. And then it talks about how to find these other people. And I actually think that the single most important person on your team is the same whether you invest at a distance or locally. I disagree with Dion that it's the contractor's handyman. I think he might agree with me. So I tell people all the time, most important person on your investing team is other investors who have already done it in front of you. So if you wanted to learn how to invest here in the Pierce County, Washington area where Dion invests, and in the Mason County, Thurston County area, like our friend who has a YouTube channel, PE turned RE, or Josh, REI Stoners, who I forget what he changed his name to.
Martin Properties.
I would imagine that if we asked them who's the most important person on their team, they would probably say Dion. Now, why is it Dion? Or why is it that other successful investor in the market that you want to invest in who already has a proven track record of success? Well, guess what? When they need a when they need a knowledge check on something, they can go to somebody who's not trying to sell them something. They can go to somebody who's proven themselves as an expert in the area. When they need a referral for that contractor, for that handyman, for that painter, plumber, whatever it might be. Hey, Dion, when was the last time you had your roof cleaned? Oh, you have a guy who does it for $250 a roof? Let me get that guy instead of hire the dude for $2,500 a roof that I found on Craigslist that just had really
You talked with Kent, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, yes. And also you've told me about your roofing guy because I was like, oh, I need to use him. And then I just did it myself because I'm like that. But
There you
but
go.
anyways, so the most important person on your out-of-state investing team is always going to be the other investors that are already investing in that market. And then the follow-up question is, well, Mike, how in the world do I find these people? First of all, they might not even live in that city. Second of all, how could I network them with them? And so I always tell people you need to join all of the Facebook groups for whatever the city name is that you're investing in, the county name, and the state name. So I created the Gary, Indiana Real Estate Investing Facebook page. There's also a Northwest Indiana Real Estate Investing Facebook page and an Indiana Real Estate Investing Facebook page. Join them all. Start reading through all the posts, seeing who comments, see who talks about what they own, see who's actually working in the area, message those people, respond to their comments, ask them questions. After you go to the Facebook groups, get on YouTube. Gary, Indiana Real Estate Investor. Oh, look at that. There's me and a couple of other people who've made some videos. Those are probably people you want to know. You get on Instagram, same thing. Hashtag Gary, Indiana Real Estate. Hashtag Indiana Real Estate. Who's producing content about this area? Reach out to those people and know. Because once you build a network with other investors, every other person on your team can be a referral from them. And they're not trying to sell you something. As much as real estate agents can be good and give you a good referral, oftentimes the real estate agent is going to get a commission if you buy from their lender or if you use their property manager. And so they're financially biased to tell you something that another investor who's not getting anything other than personal gratification, that person will give you better advice because they actually just want to see you win and they don't want you to come back and say you were wrong.
That's a good point. And I think you've talked about that a lot, especially when you're picking a market at a distance.
Yeah.
That's your biggest resource is those investors. Elizabeth R, following up on Mike should have a course. What's the best way to study your market to find the bad, average, and great deals?
So, like Zuber talks about, you won't even know the difference between good, average, and bad unless you're looking at the market consistently. So you need to look at the market consistently over a period of time. And the longer that you study something, the more of an expert you're going to be at it. The longer that you talk about it, the more that you're going to understand it. The longer that you network and speak with other investors and you ask them what asset they're buying. Are you doing student housing? Are you doing Airbnb? Are you doing midterm rentals? Are you doing single family house rentals? Or are you doing small multifamily? Or are you doing mid-sized multifamily? There's so many different real estate assets, even commercial. There's so many different real estate assets out there that, especially if you're a new person, it's really easy to get confused or lost in the sauce and start comparing different asset types that maybe don't jive apples to apples, and you're looking at apples to oranges. So what you want to do is, again, go to your network. Once you're talking to the network, start asking them what they're investing in. When people ask me, when I got started, I was looking at 3-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family houses, 1,000 square foot to 1,200 square foot, built in the 1950s that were going to rent for approximately $900 to $1,000 a month. That was my original buy box. Over time, it's transitioned to 2 to 4 unit multifamily unit buildings that I can get for under $50,000 that will cost me under $50,000 to remodel and will have an after repair value of 3 times what my original purchase price was. And then all of those need to be 2-bed, 1-bath or greater. Unless it's like a 4 unit, then I could have maybe one crappy 1-bed unit in there, something like that. So my buy box has transitioned over time as the market has transitioned over time. And then the metrics that I use to assess the deals have transitioned over time. I was looking at $250 a door cash flow day one. Now, because I'm looking at 2 to 4 unit buildings, really what I want to see is like $700 in straight profit for the building day one. And it could change depending on how many units are in there. My cash on cash return has gone up substantially. The equity play that I do now versus originally when I bought turnkey, there was no equity play. Now I'm forcing equity with a remodel. All this type of stuff has changed over time. And that's why you need to find a good mentor or a good coach or a good friend that you can sit down and have these conversations with, because the advice that I'm also saying about what I purchase right now might not be the same thing that I would give to somebody just starting out. So how do you know what a good, average, or great deal is? Well, you want somebody to kind of point you in that direction. And then from there, you need to start assessing and looking constantly and running your numbers. And once you've done that over a certain amount of time, eventually one of them's going to jump off the page at you, or that's an old expression, jump off of the internet website from your screen at you. And while you're going to look at it and you're like, is this correct? Because this seems like it's really underpriced, or this is really under rented for what I know rents would be in the area, or there must be some sort of catch. Like this must need a whole bunch of deferred maintenance, and they just gave me some really good pictures. Eventually, you'll stumble across that property that makes the rest of them look like garbage, kind of like Dion with the rest of us amigos. You know, he's just way better looking and much more articulate. And when you find that guy,
like I'm the tallest.
Exactly. You find that guy's channel, you're like, I'm absolutely joining his membership. Screw the other guys, you know. But what happens is if you do the research and you study the market and you look at these things long enough, when that one does jump off the page, it gives you that certainty that this must be a good deal. And you won't have to fight analysis paralysis anymore. What you'll be doing is clambering over yourself to call somebody to put an offer on that thing before it disappears and goes to somebody else, because you'll have the certainty and the knowledge to say, this is the one that I want. This is rare. I need that.
Yeah, I would relate it to those 4 words. Confidence comes from competence. And the confidence to make the offer, to know your market, comes from first learning the skill. Do you know how to run the numbers on a property? Because that's step one. If you can't, it's hard to remember what it's like to not know something. And there are a lot of people, and we recently had this in a I think it was a course video. I was talking with somebody who basically wanted to make, it was $100 or $150 a door. And so we went through the process of, do you do the cash on cash return? Do you know how to calculate that? Because 100 or let's say $200 a door sounds great, but did you get it for free with no money invested, or did you invest $1 billion? That's kind of a significant difference on whether this is a good deal or not. So we look at the metric of how are you judging mathematically what is a good deal? But then you need to know, because the question was, what's the best way to study the market to find the bad, average, and great deals? Math is a step in the process. Mike, you went, okay, single family is good. I can get a good return, but with the multifamily, I can make a couple of small tweaks and really force appreciation. And rent going up $100 on a single family is great, but rent going up $100 on a triplex is $300. That's a very big difference. So studying the market to know the good, the average, and the bad. Is it where you live? Do you know the areas to avoid, right? The streets to stay off of? If it's at a distance, do you have trusted boots on the ground to know the good and the bad areas? Because there's great math. And this is something I want to talk about with Chester tonight during the members meeting, is his deal meets the 1% rule. There are a lot of places where you can find the 2 and 3% rule. Rents will be 3 times your 3% of your payment of your purchase in a war zone, where you could pay the taxes to get the property. Do you want to own that there? Right. There are great mathematical deals that just don't make sense, or they have no parking, or they're next to the under the power lines in some cases, or whatever it is. What criteria are you using to determine a good or a bad deal? And then know your market. There are places where in certain areas a pool gets a premium for rentals, especially Airbnb or short term. Then there's other areas like Washington. This one confuses a lot of people. I get more rents from my properties that have a carport than I do my properties that have a garage. In certain parts of the country, people want a garage. You want to protect your car from the elements. In Washington, you want to be able to get in and out of your car with parking without having to wait for a garage door to go up and down. And garages in Washington just become storage for stuff. So my tenants that have garages, I can get more rents with that carport. But so you have to know your local market to know what makes a good and bad deal. Learn the skill for math. And one of the easier ways to learn that skill is to and use that best resource that Mike talked about. Find the investors in your market and just, don't ask for exact numbers. People sometimes don't like to share that, but just say, I would like to run the numbers on one of your properties. Can you tell me how close I get? They'll be the first one to point out some flaw that you missed, right? No, that one's in an HOA, or that one's in an area where we have to have flood insurance, or something that you're not thinking of. to learn the skill so you know what to look for when you're looking at your deals. Thank you for the question.
Also, don't buy anything in an HOA.
No, ever. There's a long list of reasons why I don't buy an HOA. Long list of reasons why no LLC, long list of reasons why I'm not a realtor, long list of reasons why no HOA, long list of reasons why single. John Williams, howdy. New job starts in 2 weeks. It will require I be in Houston every other week. Once I get the feel of the town, would you house hack in that situation? I was planning on doing something very similar. I was working at the CDL school and we were looking at putting campuses in other states, right? A form of diversification for the company. One of the first places we looked at is because that's where the owners lived was in Arizona. So I was thinking, while I'm here for months hunting for a place to put a campus, I'm going to also look for small multifamily. And I was going to house hack that. And then it ended up being Idaho. It was where we put the first out of state campus instead of Arizona. And so then I started looking there. And I actually had a deal. I was looking at a deal with through a friend where an owner had 6 duplexes. It would be like a package owner, seller finance thing that I was looking at. And then Idaho had the worst winter in a decade. And I'm not a fan of the really cold. So I decided not to buy there, even though we did end up putting a campus there. So yes, if your job allows you to be in an area, I would absolutely consider house hacking there. I definitely wouldn't, commit fraud, right? Make sure that it's a place that you will be spending some time and living there and intend to live in the property. Your job can change, something can change in the future. Yeah, but as long as you come in with clear intentions in the beginning of you're going to be there, you have to have a place to stay. Might as well house hack. I wouldn't see a problem with it. I think if I finally got to the point where I was tired of the socialist capital of Washington running the state and I had everything to buy out of state, I would probably move to somewhere like Gary for a year or two to house hack and buy all of the places that I want while I was there and just be on boots on the ground. Uh, Laser Focus Solutions Media. Man, do I miss being in this group? Love the community. This is a great community. It was great last night. Mike, we missed you at the local Tacoma FI meetup. Um, there were some new people there. It was really cool to see some new faces, some people who are kind of new. Everyone's open-minded. Nobody's selling it. No, so I've been to a lot of meetups. I've actually been invited to meetups to speak, and it's usually somebody comes in and presents, right? So you'll have the sponsor is the people that put it on or whatever. 20 or 30 people or so meet at a local restaurant, take it over for 2 or 3 hours. And Zuber's course, how to get started one rental at a time. Chester puts that in there. Thank you for that. Laura, howdy. My tenant's son, not on the lease, lives there. He blocks the entrance to the duplex. I request not to block the entrance, but continue to do it. It could prevent 911 access. Your thoughts? What would you do if you had someone not on the lease blocking the driveway, Mike?
Well, okay. So, I mean, obviously in my case, it's a property management issue. So the property manager would be responsible for handling that issue. But if I had it happen here in the duplex that I house hack, yeah, I mean, honestly, typically I'm always, especially as a police officer, of the opinion that you get so much more with you'll get more with honey than with vinegar. I'll do everything I can to do things amicably, and make sure that we're on the same, we have the same goal and that you're polite and friendly. But that doesn't always work. You can't always talk everybody into handcuffs. At some point, sometimes you have to use force. In which case, if you've gone through every step that you can to do things nicely, then I would say, hey, look, here's the thing. Okay, the lease states that you can't be here, because most leases will say you can't stay for more than a couple of days unless you're actually on the lease. Hey, if we're going to get somebody, if you want to move somebody in, we got to get them on the lease. They've got to sign. That's part of the deal. If they refuse to go down that route, then yeah, you can start imposing an actual financial fine, because usually when people break problems with the lease, there's either a fine associated with it, a fee, or you can push towards eviction. And typically eviction is the last thing that I want to do, especially if the tenant is paying and they're not damaging stuff. If they're doing something that's super inconvenient, How are they blocking access to the rental? Can you put the garbage cans there? Can you put cones out? Can you spray something on the ground and say we can't have this open? Can you say the fire department sent me a letter and they said that they're going to fine me, and if I get this fine, I'm going to have to just pass it on to you? We have to fix this problem. Can you put Ring cameras out? Can you anything? I mean, because if it's a tenant that actually pays and isn't damaging the property, I'll do everything I can to keep that person. If they're not a great tenant, well, maybe this is the catalyst you need to get rid of them. But obviously, just like a response that we have when it comes to dealing with suspect and law enforcement, it's a progressive response where you start with the lowest level of force possible, and slowly over time you ratchet it up until you gain compliance. It's your property; they can't block the entrance. It could cause a major problem. You could be fined. If that means that you end up with an eviction after trying everything else, sorry, Laura, that's just how it is sometimes.
I took a different route. I had a very similar situation at my fourplex, and it was actually the tenant, so they were even on the lease. But the lease spells out how many parking spots they get, and your lease, hopefully, Laura, your lease is like most of the leases I've seen, where mine all say anybody staying at the residence longer than 5 days needs to be added to the lease, right? So you can have visitors, but if they're going to be here a long time, they have to be on the lease. I put up tow signs and contacted a tow company, and I let all the tenants know if anyone is parked in these areas, I'm calling the tow company. Your vehicle will be towed, and you will be responsible for the impound fees. Take it out, because the lease is there to protect the tenants. Parts of your lease is going to say that the severability. You can't change part of this without both sides agreeing. You're going to have, you can't do retaliatory things. You can't shut off their power. You can't take the doors off. You can't do this. So the lease is there to protect them. It's there to protect you too. And it's kind of, I think it confuses people when I say things like, if my tenant asks me if they can pay their rent a week late, I do two things every time. And because of these two things, I've never had a tenant actually pay their rent late, even when they thought that they would ask, because they're just looking at their list of things of what can I put off, my cell phone bill, my internet, or my rent, because I have a landlord that doesn't have a property management company. I'll say, first, I'm gonna, as a favor to you, I'm gonna serve you an eviction notice the day that it's late, like right after the grace period. Because, and this is why it's a favor, now you qualify for rental assistance because you can take that form and go and apply. You can't do it. You can't even talk to those places until you have that eviction. So there's no question as to whether I'm going to file for eviction or not. I'm telling them I'm going to. And then I explain the math of time, and that explains why they don't want to pay their rent late. So if you tell your tenant, these signs are up, this is the company, it's my property. If this vehicle's parked here, I've let you know once. I'm just going to have it towed if it's parked here again, because I had a tenant that had a vehicle that wasn't registered, and the lease says non-operating vehicles can't be kept on the property. There's a legalese terms the way it's put in there. I put the signs up, and the problem was solved. And if they don't solve the problem and they park there again, then you have their vehicle towed. It's your legal right to do that as a property owner. That's how I would solve that. But Mike is right. You get more with honey than carrot over the stick kind of thing.
Dude, towing the car is a part of the progression of the use of force matrix for landlords.
Right.
That's up there.
Oculus, howdy. Getting a promotion at work and closing real estate deals is not a bad excuse for taking your time launching the course. There you go. I think it is. But Oculus is on your side.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Freedom Works says fantastic show. I appreciate that. I think it was Josh up earlier that said we had a 30% ratio on the likes. I appreciate reminders to do that. Remember, if you like the content, hit the like button. If you don't hit it, hit the dislike button twice so we know for sure you meant you did. Wealth Building Journey congratulates you again. Know it's been a while, but like Super says, celebrate the victories along the way. Love it. Yeah, other investors is your strength. Chester agrees with you. R. Freeman, howdy. And Laura says, I can't prove he lives there. It's very frustrating. Plenty places to park. Thanks for the suggestion. Yep, I would, if you can't prove it, then you don't know whose vehicle it is, so it gets towed.
Yeah, that makes it real easy.
There we go. Dion, my fourplex makes me smile when I can raise rent. Yeah, the number of units, it's a crazy how that works. Oculus, Dion, your triplex is two buildings on the same lot. I'm looking at a deal with two small houses on a lot. Anything special about two on one to consider? When you call for an insurance quote, this will actually be a part of the video that's coming out later this week on how landlords and insurance companies do something very similar as a way to make way more money. Get insurance quotes and be clear that it's two buildings on one property. The way mine works, I had to draw two policies. And so the house and duplex are on one property. There's two insurance policies that where one has a faux address that's not actually real, but it's in the descriptor of the insurance policy. And so to write that, it probably cost me a little bit more for my insurance there than it would if I had one policy covering both, because it's two separate policies. So that'd be the first thing I check with those two, is to see first, can you find insurance companies that will insure two structures on one property? Because some are using that as an excuse right now to not renew. They're not using it as an excuse to say we won't write a policy. They're doing it to say we're not renew. Is it sewer or septic? If it's septic, because one of the things that we like to do, and I've done this on a few properties, is if you have an office or a den, you add a closet, and now you have a third or a fourth bedroom, significantly more rental potential. But when you go to sell, or when you go to get permits to do anything like that, you are tied to septic. Is really hard to change the number on. Sewer, it's a little easier. So I would look at that, because you're not looking at one house adding a bedroom. If you're looking at two, maybe you can add one to each. So that's a bigger change. Other considerations with two buildings, Mike?
I mean, I've had the same problem where insurance companies, I've got a fiveplex where fiveplex is one unit, and there's a carriage house that is unoccupied. It needs to be torn down. And they were like, oh, we're just not going to insure it until you tear it down. Like, let's board it up. It doesn't have power to it. Doesn't present any type. It literally just looks like a garage. It's so small. But insurance companies are just difficult right now. So the best advice I can give you is just keep getting more and more quotes. Eventually, you'll find somebody who's motivated enough to actually work for you and find you something that will work. And then you go with them. So
Matt Bittner says, I bet a cop landlord doesn't get hustled as much as a landlord who isn't a cop. It's kind of a good point, depending on how you present it. I think there's a couple things that I do in my course when we do the course videos. One is we study NLP. We get into how to communicate. And there's a ton of YouTube videos that you could look up on de-escalation, how your communication style, your stance, your positioning in a conversation can impact the outcome. A lot of law enforcement training that is on YouTube that you can use to become a better communicator. And you can learn small skills, like say you're not a cop. Think you're not armed. They're renting from a landlord, not a property manager, because they think you have a big heart and they're going to be able to walk all over you. So before you make any big decisions, you have, and I'm going to air quote this, partners you have to run everything by. If they ask for anything that's not super easy to answer and doesn't have a financial impact to you, and you can say yes, easy, but you need to say no to some things, you don't have to be the bad guy, bad person. You could say, that's a fair request. Let me run it by my partners and see what they say. And they have no need to know that your partner is your son's cat. And you come back and you go, hey, I'm sorry, I checked with my partners and they said that I can't do that. You're not the bad person. So a small tactical shift in the conversation there can give you a little bit more of the ability to say no without being the bad guy in the conversation, because there's a lot of people that just can't do that. And if you really struggle with that, then you're probably somebody who should have a property manager.
we should do an entire video sometime about the most important communication skills to have and how to build them, because I think it's an underrated skill that we don't talk about, that you, the lumberjack, Zuber, I would say myself, most, at least of the people that you see on YouTube, certainly we have an ability to communicate pretty effectively, but I think that does play a role in how successful we are as investors, certainly you and I as police officers. And I think you could list the most important aspects of communication, being able to listen, all it is just being able to get people to do what you want through your words in a way that makes them happy. Some might call that manipulation. I would call that how I've gotten every girlfriend I've ever had. Also how I lost them, but just kidding. But I think especially because we meet all sorts of types when we go to these meetups. I've met people who I would say are awkward at communication, or people who maybe English is their second language. And there may be a need for a outline the most effective communication skills we can build to be a better investor.
So that's one of the things I cover in the course a lot when it's us in person is that communication skill. We've really literally gone into NLP, mirroring, not parroting, like the ways to do that. There's probably a deeper level to go to for that. And when I had Matt and Zuber on, one of the last follow-up questions was, what is the first thing you teach management when you promote somebody? Right. So because they were running and their tech jobs, you know, large departments, and they bring somebody in. So you have a new manager under you. What's the first thing you teach them? Both of them basically went to this form of communication to get your team to do what you want. One of my favorite comments, it's not quite a question, but no, there's a question follow up. So from Gavin. Howdy. Thank you for the statement and the question. Everything here is negative cash flow in class A to C neighborhoods, not a Leo, so I don't even drive into the D's on purpose. And we don't either. When we went to Gary, we went as a team, strapped. Should I just go more money down to make cash flow at the expense of ROI? Sometimes that works, sometimes it works the opposite. Gavin, what asset class? Right, because this is something I did. So if you're a member of Michael Zuber's school community, it's really cool. You get in there, you all get on Zoom again. It's kind of like the members, but you get his specialty people, guests that come on. So I really recommend going there. But we did one, Matt, Mike, and Beth, where we looked at Beth's portfolio. And now Beth's been investing for a long time, and she's very successful. She's a top-rated agent. Like, she's got, her husband's a contractor. They know what they're doing. They've got millions of dollars in net worth. So in no way can I say they've messed up, right? She said this in the meeting, she likes single-family homes in a certain area. I've been looking for a decade. I've not seen one single-family home that cash flows. They're all negative, right? So if I would look, okay, my market sucks, where am I going to go? I'm just going to put more money down so I get better cash flow. If I buy it all cash, it's pure cash flow. Bad ROI, better cash flow. So I went to small multifamily. Now they cash flow. Like 1 out of 300 would cash flow. So I had to look at a lot of deals, kiss a lot of frogs, and find the deal. So I'm only buying one every couple of years. So I had a lot to look at to find those deals. Are you looking at the right asset class for your market? Before you shift markets, there's that forgotten asset class that most people don't even look for. And it's how I found my house with a duplex that I wouldn't have found had I not had this search set up a very specific way. I'm looking for small multifamily. So I'm looking, my keywords with all my agents that I had the searches set up with was duplex, triplex, or fourplex. I never would have found the house with a duplex because it was listed as a single family house with an ADU. And in this area, that agent called it an ADU. They could have called it an DADU, a JADU, an accessory dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, a granny flat, mother-in-law house. They could have called it all those. So my search had all of those colloquialisms in there that the agent could possibly call it. In your market, are you looking at the different types of asset classes to see if they all don't work? Because, as an example, our friend Shelley invests in Ohio, where single family homes make more sense than the small multifamily that she was looking at. She learned the market, picked the strategy that works there. So you have to know in your market what asset class is working. And that's through that resource that Mike talked about. Somebody there is investing successfully. How are they doing it? What are they investing in? Is it your strategy? Are they adding more cash? Is it a different asset class or property type? And if all of the above is no, it's still house hack. And then I'd look for that market at a distance. Two things I'll cover. So Mike, anything that when you hear somebody says like Gavin, and I've got a different thing to say to Gavin here, everything here is negative cash flow. What do I do?
Well, what I did was I looked out of state to a market where the numbers made sense. A lot of people talk about drawing your circles further and further away from where you're at to see if you can find a market that makes sense. I drew circles that went all the way from Seattle to Indiana. And I found a market where the numbers made sense, where the returns made sense, where the cash flow made sense. Of course, in these better cash flowing markets, one of the reasons they're better cash flowing is typically because they come with a different set of problems. Problems like 3 times the national crime rate, 3 times the national poverty rate, 13,000 abandoned buildings in the city. Gary, Indiana has been labeled America's most miserable city. It was the former murder capital of the country. There's all these other problems that come with the Flint, Michigans, or the Detroits, where Chester's got an offer on a property, or Gary, Indiana. And so, you just got to pick your fight. I think that at the end of the day, I was more willing to overcome the hurdles in Gary, knowing that I would actually achieve my goal, which was cash flow and a return on my investment, versus have a nicer market here, but not make any money on any of the real estate and have to save hundreds of thousands of dollars for a down payment. So it really just comes down to which battle that you want to fight.
Two things to consider, Gavin. So if I say in my area nothing cash flows, because for a decade speed was what I used. I wanted to have my offer in as fast as possible so that I get on the seller's radar before they realized how many offers they were going to get. And then they're probably going to get an offer that beat mine. So half my portfolio was acquired with this method. They get a better offer. I reach out with an email and I follow up and I say, I understand you got a better offer. I wish you the best of luck. If it doesn't work out, if it falls through for some reason, my offer still stands. I'd like to be in second position. Half my portfolio was gotten that way. And that worked up until about 2021. And since then, interest rates and prices have gone up to where, yes, nothing cash flows. Nothing listed recently cash flows. So instead of being fast, I started watching days on market. And an average days on market in Washington State and different counties is somewhere between 6 and 9 days on market. So if it was 3 times that and I went with 30 days to start, anything over 30 days started to make sense because they list it for an amount. How much lower would it have to be to where it did cash flow? So not more cash into the deal to create more cash flow, but a lower offer to increase the ROI. 30 days kind of didn't work. People were still waiting. So I changed my metric when I found out that most of the brokerages around here list for 90 days on the MLS. And if it hits 90 days, then they have to relist, which means if it's at 91 days, the person had to take action and relist the property instead of pulling it down. So I set my search to 91 days plus in the area, found, and then I expanded my market. Now, Mike talked about expand your market out in circles because you're trying to stay with where you're at. I didn't do it for that reason. I expanded my market out about 30 to 45 minutes from Seattle, which is the central employment hub in Washington, based on Western Washington anyway. And with remote workers being more of an option now than at any point in our history, people only have to go to the office once or twice a week or not at all. So they'll live 30 to 45 minutes out. Rents pushed up because there's more demand. People that don't want to live in the city, but they want the job. So they have to go into the city once or twice a week. That's okay at a bit further out. So rents went up because they can't buy. Prices didn't push up. So I found Shelton, Port Orchard, Kitsap, Mason counties, a little bit further out from where I was normally investing. And I started finding left and right because I knew what was going on with rents, deals that made sense. And I started making offers on the market longer than normal. And so at 500,000, this place needing the work it did really wasn't a great deal. It would have been a pretty good cash on cash return with a little bit, but it was a lot of work. It was going to take a lot of time. So I offered $100,000 less than what their list price was. And I stayed there because it was on the market over 100 days. And I had another place that I offered to Frank from Old Guy REI. And for him, it didn't make sense because with property management, it took the return down. And this owner had put in 2 new leases at a lower amount. So it kind of blew the deal up. But I was finding deals all over a little bit further out where rents have pushed up, but prices haven't. So when you say things don't cash flow in my market, look at the right asset class, shift how you're making your offers to where if it's listed longer than normal, how much lower? And it could be they listed for 2 million, or what was the thing that Zuber was just talking about? Somebody listed it for 6 million and the guy offered $100,000 for it. Like that's a pretty ridiculously low offer, but somewhere in there is the number where it does make sense. And I see we had a super chat popped up from Adam. Howdy. I remember meeting Adam. Good to hear from you again. They all got an accepted offer on Thursday. Hope to close soon. Thanks for the great content and live streams. Have a great night. Thank you, Adam. Let us know how it goes. That is awesome. Nice. Well, look for the questions. We're probably wrapping up here in the next 10 to 15 minutes because I want to be ready for the members only live stream that happens at 6 o'clock tonight. Keith. Additional occupants must be added to the lease after being in unit more than 7 days. Add it in your lease terms that they must be in compliance for insurance liability. which would help at least renewal. So it could be a challenge if it isn't in the lease now, but this is how we learn. I had to learn to add things to my lease, like no water beds in the building, let alone the second floor of the building.
Who still has those?
Oh my
1990 anymore?
God. I was surprised they didn't kill the building.
Man, that's hilarious.
Jared, howdy. I started working again so I can buy a fourplex, so won't make these till after 5 p.m. Howdy, Jared. Good to see you here.
Yeah, Jared, I think you sent me a text the other day, and I don't think I responded because by the time I saw it, it was like midnight my time, and I didn't want to wake you up. But you said something about one of my YouTube videos posting. I had accidentally posted it, so then I turned it to private. I need to actually re-upload it properly. So
There you go. Some people went to Rebel Capitalist. I saw a couple of the clips from there. I haven't really watched too much of it yet. Scott, absolutely, Mike. That would be great, especially when people are too busy to communicate. There you go. Please do a video on communication skills. We should do that. And not always, I've often made the joke of I also like to date, but I look like this, so I had to learn how to talk. Uh, and like you being able to talk is probably why most of the relationships ended.
I just don't know when to shut up.
Right, exactly. Janet, how much is the course? How long is the course, Janet? So I always want to be transparent. Everything that's in my course is here on YouTube for free. There is no real secret sauce. Like it's just I got to the point where, thousands of videos. How do I if Mike met somebody like last night at the meetup, I met Malik. How do you go? Well, here's how you learned about what Dion did. Where do you send them, right? But eventually, if somebody really dives in, there's a course, it's chronological. Um, I'm not sure how many hours, over 20 hours, but it's not like hundreds of hours. Uh, it covers every aspect of investing the lazy way into financial freedom, how and now the binder strategy is free. So if you want to see kind of how my courses are structured, you can go to diontalk.com. Maybe one of the moderators can put a link there. But the binder course is free. This is how you get your tenants to ask you to raise the rent. But the course is set up in modules so you know where you're at. It tracks your progress. But we do trying to do right now every other month. So all of May, at once a week, we had a meetup where we met for an hour. And in May, we had where Mike came on, Lumberjack came on, Zuber came on. We're not doing it for June, but we're going to do it for July. And the course was like 800. I dropped it to 447 or something for now. And all of the previous meetup videos will be uploaded into the course so people can watch them. And the future ones, but it's all on Zoom, so we all interact in person on Zoom. So it's not all just videos and trying to think of what else as far as the course goes. I usually try not to sell the course. It's kind of like here's the thing I don't tend to do. You can book an hour of one-on-one time with me. I want to set that to like $5 billion because I didn't retire to have another job. I have had several really great calls where we do that call 1 hour, and then we set up another one for, at no charge in a couple of weeks to do another one to kind of like review. Or sometimes if you live close enough, we just go and have lunch to review a follow-up. And then we invite you to the local meetup and you don't come. Peer pressure, peer pressure. But that's what my course is. My course is about how to do this the lazy way. So it's not about unit scaling. It's not about multifamily. It is about how does somebody do this working full time, raising kids that doesn't have all the time in the world to do driving for dollars, mailers, or the Christian and Cody method of get to know the owners. I'm not a people person, so that's not my goal. And you can find it all at diontalk.com. There you go. That was my commercial for my course for 2024. Somebody call me on it if it's not true. I think that's the first time I've mentioned it in a live stream this year.
No, you should promote it a little bit more. Guys, if you haven't bought his course, buy his course. Support him. Look at all the support that he gives you. Seriously.
Jared, okay, so All Night Hider went to Rebel Capitalist. The content it was amazing. Content was great, but networking was even better. Of course, that's the purpose of those meetups is to get those side room conversations. I was planning on going to Turkey with George so he can learn who I am. Only then would I consider business with me. I would go to Turkey with George in a heartbeat. I had a great time in Istanbul. I was surprised because I'm not a people person. I literally just said that 2 minutes ago. It's a city with 15 million people. It was a great
Wow.
time. Grant, what is the next real estate event you are attending? That is a great question. I hear rumors about September.
Yeah. So All Nighter Hider is leading the charge on organizing a out-of-state investor meetup in Chicago, which is 40-minute drive to Indiana. And so we're trying to see if we can get put together this year a event where we would allow people to come, and Dion would be there, Matt would be there. I see that, Dion, very nice. Yes. Dion would be there, Matt would be there. I have a couple of friends in Indiana. I've had one on my channel. His name's Ferris. He has $110 million in real estate, 900 units. He would be there speaking. Friend of mine, Dominic Casteras, the high school teacher of 30 years who owns 75 plus Section 8 rentals in Chicago. He would be there and speak, as well as a few other people that you guys know. But the goal would be to talk to people about Indiana real estate and out-of-state investing real estate. And that is aiming for September 13th to 14th, but it's not guaranteed. It's not for certain. Once it is, if we will be able to get that done this year, absolutely, I'll blast that information out. And we would love to see anybody who wants to come, anybody. And we would also probably try to put together a VIP deal where you actually get to take a shuttle from Chicago with me and Dion and Matt. We'll go walk through some of my properties and through some of my friends' properties and personally escort you as security through the city of Gary so nobody gets shanked. You're welcome.
Yeah. You'd be surprised at how many people don't know you can fly with a firearm.
Yeah.
Just don't do it to Australia.
Yeah,
That doesn't work out very well.
They don't like that.
Gavin follows up here with, and this is exactly why I wanted to answer the question. So thanks for the follow-up, Gavin. I've been looking at only multifamily. My search is 2 to 4 units. Single family house has no ROI at all. 2 to 4 multifamily at current time only appears to work if you buy reno, double rents. Mike, take my money. So yes, Mike, take my money too. I was going to invest in Gary if I didn't find the places and expand the market here like I did. So I would have taken your course, going to take your course because I'm going to do a review, of course.
Appreciate that.
So Gavin, if you're looking for 2 to 4, you're missing the house with ADU. I would have missed a house with a duplex. That's my best deal. It's not my favorite deal because it's had some issues, but it is my best cash on cash return and yield and appreciation and value of everything that's gone with the prime properties that I only got because I was searching for the house with ADU. And it's literally a 2,200 square foot house and a full duplex with 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. So a lot of us get stuck in our head of thinking of ADUs on what we could build. And building means usually, per regulation in your state, it has to be behind the house, further from the main entrance than the main house. It has to be smaller square footage than the main house, some limit it to 1,200 square feet or less. Like there's all these limitations. That's to build. There are houses with ADUs all over the country that is a 7-bedroom house and a 5-bedroom house on the same property. And the 5-bedroom house is the main house. It's just there's 2 structures on one property. So I make sure you're adding that to your search before you dip out to another market. You never know what's going to pop up. And you're right. Duplex, triplex, and fourplex, generally on the MLS or even off market, isn't going to cash flow. If they did, they would be either 1, not selling it because it's a great asset to own, or 2, somebody else already scooped it up. That's looking for the thing that sat longer than normal. My fourplex was a horrible. The agent must have been asleep at the wheel. It was one picture from the back that showed just sort of big block, but it's 4 townhouse style with carport, with garages in the front, a garage for each unit. It's worth twice what they had listed it for. And then the appreciation since I bought it hasn't sucked. So looking for things that are on the market longer, looking for the deal that maybe is mislisted or listed poorly that somebody else is missing. Tons of ways to keep looking in your market, to shift how you're looking. That doesn't mean you're going to find the great deal. Those are the avenues I would pursue before I said, okay, I'm not going to find anything here. I gave myself, I think, when I got back from Portugal, I think I said I gave myself a year, Mike. I think I told you.
Mhm.
I'm going to look for a year. If I don't find anything, I'm going to start biting in Gary. Matt says, I bet abandoned house deals in Gary, Indiana is like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, but half those fish are poisonous, more than
Right.
half.
Is it on the street that you want to own it on?
Yeah.
And there's Rob, my Pink Panther for Mike for the day.
Also asked if I was shot at this week. No, actually, now that I've been promoted, I spend significantly less time doing that, sadly. So, but I did get to go to the range with the team this week, and that was a lot of fun. It was a good time. It was a good day. We did shoot house. I love shoot houses. They're so much fun.
Cynthia, this is per old Gary I says, it's amazing how many say they are introverts. It really showed in Vegas. It did. How many of us, how many people went to Vegas, the one rental at a time event in Vegas, interacted and networked, like everybody was talking to everybody. But then, like me, you go home, you lock yourself in the house for like 3 weeks and you just don't people for 3 weeks. Because so um working in law enforcement, you tend to be around somebody on the worst day of their life. So victim or perpetrator, it's the worst day of their life. That's why they're interacting with you. So I'm not really a people person. Then I got the job at the CDL school and I started interacting with people who were doing something actively to improve their life. And I was like, wow, it can actually be fun to interact with people. This is amazing. This content, this community of people, this is almost everybody who's here, even the haters, are on YouTube going, okay, what can I do to make 5 years from now better than it is today? Because today might not be great, but I can do something that where 5 years, which are going to happen anyway, can be better. These are people trying to make their life better. This is all people that you want to interact with. Oculist to me, if you shop in Gary, you might have to lower your standards for credit score. You have the only market where Section 8 has 7 plus. I've asked around. I think a lot of people think that. So when I list a property, I'll have 20 or so Section 8 people apply, and one of them will have the high credit score. So it's not like it's just normal for Section 8 to have high credit scores here. It's just possible that they do. And I don't have 100 plus units like Matt does. So I'm not doing 20 or 30 Section 8 units. I have 3 or 4 to maintain that 1/3 ratio that I'm doing. So I don't have to find very many. So if I went to Gary, I would probably consider a few other things to that. First, you're renting to Section 8. It's the relationship with the housing authority, kind of like Frank was talking about in his van life updates the other day. Has an eviction coming where the tenant is only paying 60 or 60 something dollars a month, but they're falling behind. So the eviction is about to start. The tenant finds an agency to help catch them up. And then the Section 8 agency says, just to resolve this going forward, we're just going to pay 100% going forward. The relationship with the agency would make me probably lower my need for credit score requirement versus in Washington. It depends on your agency. I've got Pierce County, Washington, not to name anybody by name, but Pierce County, Washington. The housing authority sucks so much I won't own a rental there that has Section 8 in it. Thurston County, not so bad. So you got to know your local team. Were you shot at this week, Mike?
No, I answered that already.
Okay, I missed that. All right. Okay, Raven, howdy. Welcome to the channel. I am wanting to retire in 10 years, hopefully less. I live in Snohomish County and am interested in going to a local meetup. Please tell me if there are any events or groups in my area. Thank you. So Snohomish is a bit north of us. If you're anything like me, I avoid Seattle at all costs. So there are some Seattle meetups, but I can't stand going there, so I generally won't go. I don't even know if I would go if I was invited to present to a Seattle meetup. Like I'll go to Olympia, I'll go to Tacoma, I'll go to where else have we gone? We've gone to Portland, Vancouver. I want to say Sacramento, but that's not where we were. It was Fresno, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Fresno.
Madera or something. Vegas, right? But not Seattle.
You went to Gary with me.
Yeah, I'd go to Gary. Gary's way better than Seattle. And everybody says, "Oh, it's the worst place in the." No, it is not the worst place. Although the wait staff could use an attitude.
Yeah.
That was rough. Um, You can go to BiggerPockets and look for local meetups. You can search for Facebook groups that include, Snohomish, Everett, Linwood, Mukilteo, different places where there might be meetups. We do a meetup in the Tacoma area, which is a bit of a drive because you got to go through Seattle. So I don't want to subject to that to you. But we've had people like Divin and Dave who used to live up in Bellingham drive down. And we've had Jared drive up from the Oregonian area. And we meet once a month. So the local restaurant, we all talk for a few hours. Nobody's presenting. It's just everybody at a table. I'm trying to think if anybody here knows of meetups north of Seattle, let us know. Maybe find some online virtual meetups, kind of like Old Guy REI is doing Wednesday nights. I don't know if you want me to blast it because how many people you want there, Frank, but if you reach out to Old Guy REI, they do a Wednesday night meetup on Zoom where it went for 4 hours the other day. And they actually had a guest who hung out for all 4 hours. I forget her name. So Frank, let us know who that was. But it's nice to meet in person. I like that, but it is really nice that we can all connect online at any point in time. Um, and it's like you said, the investors are your key to this. There are people who, Curtis reaches out. He says, just sends a text. He goes, "Hey, my tenant wants to do this. What would you do?" And I can give an answer. It's nice to have because I've reached out to Matt and Zuber, and so recently Beth was she brought her portfolio into the school community for one rental at a time. And she had me and Matt and Mike Zuber look at it. Like she literally sent us a spreadsheet of this is what it is. Within 7 to 10 years, I want to turn equity into cash flow. What would you do? So we talked kind of did this review. And she was like, I can't believe I got these three investors that reached financial freedom and retired early to look at my portfolio. I did the same thing. Right. I made a YouTube video. I do the Three Amigos recorded every week with Zuber every week for like years now. So that just before I retired, like 3 months before I retired, I made a video. The lumberjack landlord and Michael Zuber tore apart my portfolio to see what I was doing. And both of them said, you got a paid off house, interest rates are low. You should go to a cash out refinance right now to have cash ready for all the deals that are going to come. You know how hard it is to find somebody that has a huge portfolio that is very successful, who sit there to take a couple hours and go, let me look at what you're doing and let me give you my actual opinion of what you're doing. Kind of like Mike. Mike goes, "Hey, Dion, fly to Gary with me and let's go drive to every one of my properties. And you just kind of give me your thoughts on what this is." That's how this community works.
It was good content.
It was good content. Yes.
Your most viral video of all time came from one of my rentals in Gary.
It did. Yes. On Instagram, no less on Instagram, the thing that
Yep.
I'm actually not even on very much.
The thing that I tell you need to use, his most viral video of all time with over 300,000 views came from coming with me to Gary and using Instagram, which he refuses to use. So you're welcome. I was right twice.
And now I have Dragos doing it, who all, by the way, just hit another 500,000 with me views. So that's pretty cool.
Good for him.
I want to make sure we get to the last questions here. Sorry, Raven, we got a little distracted there, but yes, that's what I would do for that. Dynamic performance development. I'm a fitness trainer who does desire to own a gym. I currently have 2 rentals and an empty lot. I want to reach financial freedom, but I'm struggling to find a deal. Any tips? So if you want to own a gym, have you looked into Eat the Frog?
I think he said I'm a fitness trainer who doesn't desire to own a gym. No, I don't know.
Thank you for correcting me because I would have wasted 5 minutes trying to talk him through how that would work. Doesn't desire to own a gym. So good. Because I'm a CDL instructor, a CDL driver that was a CDL trainer for 13 years that ran a CDL school who doesn't want to own a CDL school and doesn't want to own a truck. So I get it. If you are a fitness trainer but you don't want to own a gym, you have 2 rentals. I don't know that I've seen the name Dynamic Performance Development before. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please don't take what I'm about to say the wrong way because you might hear something you don't like. Earlier, there was a question from somebody who wants to reach financial freedom in 10 years, maybe sooner. That's the best way to phrase it. Like that's a genius sentence put together. It takes a decade to make work optional to where you never have to work again in your life. You can do it faster. Things can work out to where it happens faster. But if you set a faster goal, you're going to be tempted to take risks, cut corners, add risk, and it can blow up in your face. But if you set a 10-year goal, but it happens faster, great. So you have two rentals and you struggle to find a deal. You have the element of time. As you save every month, the money you have for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves gets bigger. So some of your options change. I went from I'm looking for duplexes. I have enough down for a fourplex. As I'm looking for my fourplex, I got enough to self-fund a burr. So all my options shifted as I was saving. I didn't just stop, shift. I said I did set a timeline. If I don't find a deal within a year from when I got back from Portugal, I'm going to look at a new market, right? So kind of have a clear decision on how long you will do this. But watch how your options change as your saving grows and what's shifting at the market. I talked a little bit earlier, if you were here for it, watching days on market instead of making fast offers. Which when you see something listed longer than normal, make a low offer to see how that works out. And because you could create the yield you need by getting the offer accepted at a price that makes sense to you, ignoring the list price. Are you looking at the right asset class for your market? Right? It's not you have two rentals. What are they? How did you acquire them? That might not be what works now. It could be there's been a shift and small multifamily, there's too much competition. So now you want to look for houses with ADUs, or you might need to go to rent by the room or midterm rentals or something shifted that I don't know about your whole story, which is some of the things that we talk about when we get into like the members of the course videos where we literally dive into a portfolio and say, here's what we think you should do. What are you doing with the empty lot? Justin Canberra actually sent me something recently where he's doing rent out parking spots through an app. Creative use for it. Beth Traverso, I think, does this with a lot. And it's what I would do if I had a lot. If I had a lot, I'd probably contact any local CDL school and rent it out for a backing yard. It's the hardest thing for them to find if their trucks can get it out of there. But you can also put up a temporary fence, have construction companies rent it to store equipment. There's a lot of uses for a vacant lot that aren't all tech related to whatever apps are out there. But it depends on access, what the city will allow, those kind of aspects. Any tips for somebody who has two rentals and an empty lot, wants to reach financial freedom, but struggling to find a deal? Mike?
Sorry, I was looking at one other question. What was that last question, Dion? Oh, my phone literally went to an ad because I don't pay for YouTube and it blocked out my
Oh, they got ads in these now? That's stupid.
yeah. You have ads in your live stream if you don't pay for it. It just all of a sudden will pop up and it'll get rid of the chat.
There's a good reason to have YouTube Premium, other than being able to close the app and still listen to it.
Right.
Um, if somebody's struggling to find a deal right now, any tips on finding the deal?
Yeah. So I didn't realize we are still on that question. I think we covered that in great depth earlier in this live. So my suggestion would be to Dynamic Performance Development, who I think is one who asked that. Go back and rewatch this entire live because somebody asked about how to get started investing out of state, and somebody else asked how to assess good, great, and average deals. And I gave like a 5-minute dissertation on how to build a team, how to network, how to make that happen, where to look, how to find these people. So I would go back and watch that rather than just repeat it all again. Now it's in this video, so just rewind it and watch it on 1.5 speed.
I think we're going to be wrapping up here. Just look really quick if there's any other questions that you want to get to. I know there's one thing I want to cover from Matt down towards the bottom. So first, let me call Miguel Salty. Just had a question. If it's okay, if you don't want to answer, but you say you never made more than 50K before you invested, how much did you end up making when you were the top of the company? So up until I was 48, I think I'd never really made more than 50 until 47. So 2017, I think I made 61,000 that year. It's the first time I broke 50,000. But my rentals started making more money than I was making at work, and the owners were aware. So I got what was called golden handcuffs. I would get a percentage of the sale if the company were to sell, and it ended up being around $2 million, what I would post-tax walk away with. I gave that up when I retired. $2 million sounds like a lot when you've usually made less than 50. I went from 61, and then the last 2 years that I was there, I started making six figures. I think one of them I hit 200, and I paid so much in taxes from those 2 years. Now, here's the thing. I think this confused the people who own the company, right? You got a guy running the company who has his own schedule, is in charge of hiring, termination, direction of the company. Basically, they look at the numbers and they just make sure we're being ethical and making money. Do whatever you want. And so you start paying him a couple $100,000 a year, and then he quits. How confusing does that have to be? Because while my job rarely paid more than 50,000, and it was only those last couple of years where it started to actually make real money, rentals started making real money right about the same time. In 2022, 2021, I think I made like 128,000. 2022, I was projecting 168, but the binder strategy, because of what happened in 2020, turned that into 204. And then 2023 was 232. So I'm transparent. I share my numbers. As somebody who spent most of their life never making more than 50 grand, to say, oh yeah, the couple $100,000 and it takes me 2 hours a month. These are insane numbers that don't sound real to me, but they look real when I open the banking app. And then Dynamic Performance Development said the ad blocked us when you spoke about the lot. I'm sorry. So with the lot, it would be find some creative use for it. What do you use it for? Justin Canberra sent me an app where you can rent out parking spots. I talked about finding a CDL school, seeing if they want to lease it as a backing yard, if it would work, contacting construction companies, maybe putting up a temporary fence so they could store equipment or materials there. Like there's a lot of creative things that you can use that for. And the last question that we'll wrap up with from Matt Bittner, which I lost. Does Gary, Indiana show any signs of industrialization? I'll have an answer and then I'm going to turn it over to the guy who actually knows. It's 45 minutes from Chicago. And since 2020, remote work has been more of an option than at any point in our entire life. So I see the demand and the rehabs. And while we were there looking at Mike's things, investors drove up to us because they could see that the rehab was getting done. And he said, hey, are you thinking of selling? That's how high the demand is in that area. So yeah, there's some streets you don't want to own on, but there's some streets you would like to. You don't even rent two remote workers. You're still using Section 8 for that section, but I think it isn't so much industrialization as remote work is going to impact it. But now, the king of Gary has the real answer.
As the duly elected sheriff of the internet and the rightful king, true heir of the city of Gary, I am the foremost authority and expert on this subject. Gary is industrialization. Well, it's actually suffered from deindustrialization after NAFTA was passed in the 70s, which caused the city's population, which was nearly around 200K, to fall to where it is now, to around 70K, which is why most people write off the city of Gary, which I think is a major, major mistake. And I've been being proven right over the last 5 years. Dion is correct when he says demand is crazy there right now. I took a group of investors from all around the country to Gary earlier this year in February. And I pointed out as we were driving down the streets, you see rollout dumpsters in every other driveway, houses being worked on all over the place. Things get bought and remodeled and fixed up and sold and kept and flipped and everything. The city is coming back. Now, a city that suffered that long and to such a degree, it's going to take 20 years for it to come back. But I firmly believe I have gotten in on the ground floor of what will be a comeback story of sorts 1 or 2 decades from now. I think people will probably look at what I did and what I'm seeing and what I'm participating in and say, wow, dang, how did you call that? Are more jobs coming to the area? Yeah, I mean, Gary's expanding its international airport, which is silly when a small airport calls itself that, but it technically is. The Hard Rock Casino opened up in Gary a few years ago. There are better tax benefits in the state of Indiana. There's so many good things going. The newly elected mayor of Gary has made it a priority to knock down abandoned buildings and focus on getting rid of blight. Instead of having abandoned buildings, knock them down and just have it be an open field. It's more aesthetic. It's less likely to bring in crime. So things are turning around. Things are getting better. I think that at some point we'll start to see the population go up. It's certainly decreasing at a much slower rate. In fact, actually, I don't even know if it's decreasing anymore, if it's plateaued. I'd have to look that up. But values are going up, rents are going up. And so I think that's a very strong indicator of where the city is headed. And like Dion said, more and more people don't want to live in very expensive Chicago. 45 minutes away from Chicago is not that bad if you have a remote job and have to go to work once or twice a week. It's funny because here in Seattle, we always joke that Seattle is an hour away from Seattle. An hour-long commute is just routine. It's just what we do. And so I have high hopes for the city. I think it's going to do very well. All of the properties that I bought have gone up in value substantially. Rents have gone up substantially. I don't have issues filling it beyond the fact that I'm just picky. And even still, I fill the rentals. So good news on the Gary, Indiana front. My subjects.
There you go. Thank you all very much. Until our next video, thanks for coming to my Dion and Mike talk. There we go.
Sweet.